A man accidentally time-traveled and became the Empress's husband. He also acquired a simp system. Despite possessing extraordinary abilities himself, he would rather hide them and live as a kept man. Even when faced with beautiful women throwing themselves at him, he directly slapped her to death with one palm, simply because women would expose his true nature. So, to protect his cushy lifestyle, he had no choice but to eliminate the woman. Hearing this, Yu Yen fixed her beautiful eyes fiercely on Xiao Tian, cursing him out loud as a fool. After cursing, she rolled her eyes and died of anger. Xiao Tian wasn't angry at all. Instead, he shook his head disdainfully. See? I've exposed your scheme, and now you're turning angry out of shame. Little Zero had a dark line on his face and cautiously asked, Your Highness, might you have made a mistake? Xiao Tian, however, shook his head and let out a long sigh. I've seen plenty of people like this. She definitely has ill intentions. These words left Little Zero speechless, momentarily at a loss for how to respond. Royal Prince, is this a sign of abnormality or sheer determination? Yet, the thought of Royal Prince's terrifying power. Little Zero looked at Xiao Tian with admiration. He must be truly steadfast, unswayed by external distractions. That's it. At this moment, Xiao Tian looked ahead at the blood-red pavilion and said, Now only one person remains. At this moment, in a room at the Blood Cloud Tower headquarters, Yun Zuanlai was trembling under the bed, having already opened the door to the Blood Cloud Tower's treasure vault. He hoped this would catch Xiao Tian's attention, allowing him to plunder the treasures and leave satisfied. Moreover, the Great Yin Empire definitely holds a great secret. Despite this royal prince having no cultivation stage, his physical body is unbelievably strong. These floating islands were all ruins I encountered by chance in my early years. Their strength was such that they could withstand even a 10th layer sacred stage expert for a while. I never expected Xiao Tian to shatter them one by one with a single punch from a distance. If I had known Xiao Tian was this terrifying, Yun Zuanlai would have long since backed down. Why would he even think of challenging such a monster? The reason I was able to rise to prominence was entirely due to the gains I made from the ruins in my early years. These ruins are intricately connected to the Great Yin Empire. Nowadays, various forces are eyeing the Great Yin Empire covetously, especially regarding the secrets of the Great Yin Empire. At that moment, footsteps suddenly sounded outside the room. Yun Zuanlai stopped his wild thoughts and held his breath in fright. After the footsteps gradually faded away, Yun Zuanlai knew his plan had succeeded. Xiao Tian must have been drawn away by the treasury. Only then did Yun Zuanlai secretly let out a sigh of relief and prepared to climb out from under the bed. But as soon as he turned over, he saw Xiao Tian outside the bed, grinning at him with a smug look. Found you! Yun Zuanlai was instantly startled, trembling with fear as if his soul had fled. Are you a child hiding under the bed? Xiao Tian said while reaching out to grab the other person. Yun Zuanlai no longer concealed the turmoil of spiritual energy within him, vanishing from the spot in an instant as he fled outward. Meanwhile, the main structure of Blood Cloud Tower suddenly exploded. Just as Yun Zuanlai thought Xiao Tian would be killed in the blast, Xiao Tian instantly appeared before Yun Zuanlai in the blink of an eye. He reached out and grabbed his neck as if picking up a chick. Xiao Tian, holding Yun Zuanlai, landed in front of Little Zero. It's really funny to say this guy actually hid under the bed. Hearing this, Little Zero's face darkened as she looked at the figure being held by the royal prince, feeling somewhat surreal. If she hadn't experienced it herself, who would believe that the king of assassins from the southern wilderness domain was being tossed around like a chick, and even scared into hiding under the bed by the royal prince? Yun Zuanlai, being held up, looked defiant and questioned Xiao Tian. I suppressed my spiritual energy, held my breath, and even stopped my heartbeat temporarily. How did you find me? He simply couldn't figure out how he had been exposed. Xiao Tian explained that he had heard the sound of Yun Zuanlai's blood flowing. This statement made Yun Zuanlai's face turn pale, and even Little Zero looked as if she had seen a ghost. Alright, I've answered your question. Now, it's your turn to obediently answer mine. Xiao Tian stared at Yun Zuanlai and demanded, What exactly is his reason for targeting the Great Yin Empire? If you promise to spare my life, I'll give you the information, Yun Zuanlai said upon hearing this. Without another word, Xiao Tian snapped his neck and sneered. Speak or not, who's going to indulge you anyway? Standing nearby, Little Zero watched as the king of assassins from the southern wilderness domain stared wide-eyed, dying with unclosed eyes, and trembled, thinking to herself how terrifying this royal prince was. She just wanted to go home. A man woke up to find himself transmigrated as the Empress's husband. He clearly possessed top-tier strength. Yet he only wanted to be a kept man. Now to keep Empress as his powerful supporter, Xiao Tian did not hesitate to reveal his true strength in order to eliminate the Blood Cloud Tower, the top assassin organization in the southern wilderness domain. After eliminating Yun Zonglai, the master of the Blood Cloud Tower, Xiao Tian lifted Little Zero and flew towards the Great Yan Empire. Before leaving, he made sure to shatter the headquarters of the Blood Cloud Tower. Accompanied by the sound of intense explosions, countless ruins and debris fell from the sky, crashing into the water. On the entire island submerged in the lake water, there stood a protruding mountain stone stele. The large characters "Act on Heaven's Behalf" were inscribed on it, with two smaller characters below that seemed to be a signature, King Yama. At the same time on Azure Flame Mountain, Xiao Tian gently landed while holding Little Zero's hand. After landing, Xiao Tian waved his hand forward and said, "Let's go. It's time to head home for dinner." The days of the royal prince are finally secure. The scoundrels of Blood Cloud Tower, who coveted the Great Yan Empire and forced him to take action, have been wiped out at last. Who knows how many innocent people have been saved because of me. As Xiao Tian walked back, he muttered to himself, while Little Zero followed behind, eagerly asking what it meant when he signed off as King Yama earlier. Hearing this, Xiao Tian explained, "It's a code name from my hometown. In my hometown there's a saying, if King Yama decides your life ends at midnight, who dares to keep you alive until dawn?" With that, Xiao Tian suddenly halted his steps and turned his head coldly to look at Little Zero. "By the way, once we're back, don't speak out of turn, understood?" Instantly, Little Zero felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar, shuddering all over, and quickly responded loudly, "Yes." Seeing Little Zero so compliant, Xiao Tian smiled and reached out to ruffle Little Zero's head. Good, children should obediently listen to adults. Then with his hands clasped behind his back, Xiao Tian continued on his way at a leisurely pace, looking every bit the lordly figure. Meanwhile, Little Zero reached up to smooth down his disheveled hair. She blushed and muttered softly, "I'm not that young anymore." Xiao Tian waved his hand and said, "All right, I know you're quite grown up." At this moment, Little Zero remembered that Royal Prince was a monster who could even hear the blood flowing in others' veins. Then Little Zero blushed and hurriedly chased after him, catching up in no time. Xiao Tian then brought Little Zero back to their original temporary campsite. The female guards had already packed everything and were sitting quietly, waiting in place. Upon seeing Xiao Tian and Little Zero return, the several of them immediately stood up and looked over. Xiao Tian also said to them, "We found it. That was close, really close. This is a token of love. If it were lost, I couldn't bear the Emperor's wrath." Little Zero, standing nearby, silently watched Xiao Tian's performance. Truly worthy of a royal prince, she thought. Lying without a hint of blushing or breathlessness, leaving no trace of deception. Xiao Tian once again gave orders to the female guards. "All right, let's go home for dinner." With that, he took the lead and headed toward the mountain exit with them. Following closely behind Xiao Tian, the female guard captain said with a worried expression, "Your Highness, this is too reckless. We don't know if those scoundrels from Blood Cloud Tower have any accomplices lurking nearby. Young General, please don't mind my frankness, but your earlier escape was far too reckless." Hearing this, Little Zero broke into a sweat on his forehead and whispered in explanation, "Sister Lu, everything's fine now, let's not talk about it anymore." At the same time, he desperately wished in his heart that she would stop speaking. The royal prince could hear all of this. This Lu Yan had followed his mother into battle since her youth, earning numerous merits. Little Zero felt quite close to her. She was genuinely afraid that something the other person said might touch Xiao Tian's reverse scale, causing him to suddenly turn around and strike them dead with a slap. However, Little Zero suddenly noticed Lu Yan's hand trembling uncontrollably as it gripped the hilt of the sword at her waist. As if struck by a realization, Little Zero asked softly, "Sister Lu, are you trembling because we encountered the Blood Cloud Tower assassin? Are you thinking of him again?" At this point, Little Zero let out a long sigh. Sister Lu's fiancé was a true hero. If he hadn't single-handedly held off the Blood Cloud Tower assassins, the people of that town would surely have been massacred. A few years ago, when Sister Lu rushed with her troops to reinforce them, that man at the entrance of the town was already covered in blood and had stopped breathing, yet he still stood firmly in place. Even the emperor once said he was the backbone of Great Yan. Lu Yan sighed. With tears streaming down her proud, smiling face, she asked, "Young general, why are you suddenly saying all this?" Little Zero walked over to Lu Yan and gently patted her, comforting her as she said. She said all this just to let someone know the reason behind Lu Yan's earlier emotional outburst. At that moment, The female guard beside Xiao Tian noticed that the royal prince suddenly began to smile happily. Curious, she asked him if there was some joyful news. Xiao Tian, upon hearing the inquiry, casually glanced back at Lu Yan, who had a smile at the corner of his mouth. He simply felt that he had just done something very meaningful. So rest in peace. This remark left the guards exchanging bewildered glances, utterly confused about what the royal prince was talking about. This is the most satisfying male lead I've ever seen. He woke up to a life that every man dreams of. Not only did he gain an empress wife as beautiful as a flower, he also acquired a simp system. Moreover, he possesses top-tier abilities himself. Not only did he successfully secure the favor of the empress, even his little bodyguard was utterly captivated by him. She rushed early in the morning to find him at the palace, but was stopped right at the mansion's gate. The man asked her where she was heading in such a hurry. The person before her was none other than Zhong Yongming, the Minister of Revenue of the Great Yan Empire, the husband of General Zhong Lishuang, and also her father. Little Zero turned her head to look at her father and replied, "I plan to go to the palace." Hearing this, Zhong Yongming looked at Little Zero with an expression of disbelief. Normally, my daughter always dresses in sportswear. Yet now she is wearing a loose fiery red robe with her hair tied up in a high ponytail, appearing more feminine than ever before. These words made Little Zero blush with shyness. Before His Majesty departed, he requested that his daughter keep an eye on the royal prince. She is now about to enter the palace to serve as his attendant guard. Hearing this, Zhong Yongming felt inexplicably displeased. The royal prince is protected by the imperial guards in the palace. Why do you need to be so attentive? Moreover, I've heard that the royal prince indulges in pleasure and does nothing productive. Before he could finish, Little Zero interrupted. Father, you've never even interacted with His Highness the royal prince. How can you judge him so casually? Little Zero turned and scampered away. Zhong Yongming hurriedly chased after her, but by the time he reached the mansion gate, he saw his daughter heading straight for the palace. A sense of dread washed over him instantly. He felt as though the cabbage he had carefully nurtured for decades was about to be trampled by a wild boar. Meanwhile, in the palace, Xiao Tian was reclining on a soft lounge chair, enjoying the refreshing breeze created by the palace maids waving their palm leaf fans. Beside him, palace maids peeled tribute fruits and served them directly to his lips. He took a sip of tea from his cup, and Xiao Tian leisurely leaned back into the recliner, continuing to watch the remarkable lives of the system's previous hosts. Clothes were handed to him, and meals were served to his mouth. Not only could he enjoy the service of palace maids, but he also got to watch special effects blockbusters played by the system. In one word, bliss. Xiao Tian muttered gleefully while humming a cheerful tune, which made Lu Yan, standing nearby, frown deeply and feel a strong urge to draw the large blade in hand and strike Xiao Tian with it. Now that Her Majesty has personally taken to the battlefield, risking her life at the front lines, yet her husband is here indulging in pleasure, it's truly infuriating. At that moment, footsteps echoed from behind. Lu Yan turned to look and was immediately struck with disbelief. Was this still the young general he knew? Meanwhile, Xiao Tian, lounging comfortably on the recliner, gave Little Zero a thorough once-over. For a moment, he felt a strange unfamiliarity with her. "What brings you here, little girl?" Little Zero replied with a shy expression. "His Majesty ordered me to protect the royal prince, so of course I must fulfill my duty." Xiao Tian looked at Little Zero and felt a headache coming on, thinking to himself, "With you by my side, what if you slip up one day and expose me?" At this thought, Xiao Tian waved his hand impatiently and told her to go somewhere cool and not to hang around here. He didn't need her protection. As his words fell, the surroundings immediately fell silent. The attending palace maids stiffened, and Lu Yan widened her eyes in disbelief. She stared at Xiao Tian, wondering if he had a death wish. With the young general's temper, if he were to take action, should she intervene or not? But Little Zero, blushing, insisted she wouldn't leave and would stay right there. It was the emperor's order, and she had no intention of disobeying it. After saying this, she stood firmly in place, as if her feet had taken root. This scene left Lu Yan standing by, utterly dumbfounded. Especially when she saw Little Zero's cheeks flushed with a hint of shyness, staring at Xiao Tian with a strange gaze. Lu Yan's heart skipped a beat. Oh no, the young general might really be losing it. She must report this to the general, otherwise there could be major trouble. As she thought this, Lu Yan's gaze toward Xiao Tian completely changed. To be fair, the royal prince does have striking looks, but who would have thought a man could be so dangerously captivating? First, he somehow bewitched His Majesty into insisting on marrying him, despite his apparent uselessness. And now, even the pride of the younger generation of the Great Yan Empire, the young general Little Zero, has fallen under the spell of this enchanting royal prince. The more Lu Yan thought about it, the more panicked she became. A man woke up to find himself transmigrated as the Empress's husband, living the dream life that every man yearns for. With clothes handed to him and meals served to his mouth, he could enjoy being attended to by palace maids. He could even watch special effects blockbusters played by the system. Even the proud daughter of the Great Yan Empire, young General Little Zero, was utterly captivated by him. Not long ago, in order to keep his comfortable position as the Empress's favorite, he did not hesitate to reveal his true strength. He wiped out the Blood Cloud Tower, the #1 assassin organization in the southern wilderness domain. The news quickly reached the palace. Lu Yan was also shocked upon hearing the news. The deputy captain actually told her that the branch of the Blood Cloud Tower in the Great Yan Empire had been destroyed, and immediately asked if the news was true. It was absolutely confirmed. Someone witnessed a small island-like flying spiritual artifact plummeting from the sky and crashing into Luyang Mountain. And the spiritual artifact had a plaque reading Blood Cloud Tower hanging from it. Upon hearing this, Lu Yan suddenly understood. No wonder His Majesty has never been able to locate the Blood Cloud Tower's headquarters. It turns out they keep changing its location all the time. At that moment, the curious Little Zero came over to ask what had happened. Seeing it was Little Zero, Lu Yan replied, "Young General, a branch of the Blood Cloud Tower has been wiped out." Upon hearing this, Little Zero nodded calmly and hummed in acknowledgement. Then what? As soon as these words were spoken, the air seemed to fall silent instantly. Lu Yan looked at Little Zero, young general, with an expression of speechlessness. "Aren't you the least bit surprised?" Little Zero's expression froze for a moment before he immediately snapped back to reality. He exclaimed in surprise, "Blood Cloud Tower's branch has been destroyed. This is incredible news. I just didn't process it right away." Seeing this scene, the onlooker Xiaotian muttered, "This kid is so fake." He was quite worried that Little Zero's terrible acting skills would be exposed in no time. Yet, Little Zero's clumsy acting didn't arouse any suspicion from Lu Yan and the others. At this moment, Lu Yan was very concerned about another issue. Under normal circumstances, this would indeed be good news, but now it's hard to say. Little Zero was puzzled. Why wasn't this good news? After all, her husband's revenge had now been avenged. But Lu Yan explained with a serious expression. The destruction of the Blood Cloud Tower's branch occurred within the territory of the Great Yan Empire. If the Blood Cloud Tower headquarters were to confront the Great Yan Empire, what should be done? Now that His Majesty is personally leading the expedition, the Great Yan Empire simply cannot withstand the retaliation from the Blood Cloud Tower headquarters. What if the King of Assassins from the southern wilderness domain personally intervenes to cause chaos on the northern frontier battlefield? At this point, Lu Yan suddenly noticed that the young general in front of her was actually smiling, based on her understanding. Little Zero should be deeply worried, wishing she could rush to the northern frontier to report the situation to General Zhong Lishuang, discussing countermeasures, yet she is smiling now. At this critical moment for the survival of the Great Yan Empire, how can Little Zero possibly laugh? Could it be that Little Zero has already succumbed to Xiaotian's charm and fallen prematurely? Thinking this, Lu Yan couldn't help but ask, "Young general, what are you laughing at?" Hearing this, Little Zero finally snapped back to reality. Seeing Lu Yan and the vice-captain's strange looks, he snapped out of it, realizing he had lost his composure. Only she knew that the headquarters of the Blood Cloud Tower had been destroyed, and that the King of Assassins, who had hidden under the bed, had been dragged out and killed by Xiaotian. But the others were unaware. In fact, Little Zero had just started to speak. Xiaotian raised his hand without hesitation and slapped Little Zero squarely on the head. The sound of the slap echoed sharply through the air. This immediately left Lu Yan and the others utterly bewildered. It was only then that Little Zero belatedly looked at Xiaotian, realizing he had almost let something slip. "I could hear it clearly from the side. With the nation facing such a crisis, how can you still be laughing and joking? What kind of behavior is that?" Xiaotian pointed sternly at Little Zero and scolded. "When you make a mistake, you should stand straight and take your punishment. How dare you cry? Hold it back." Little Zero was startled by Xiaotian's fierce expression and quickly held back her tears. She lowered her head shyly and admitted her mistake. "Captain Lu, children don't know any better, so don't take it to heart. She's not a bad kid at heart." Xiaotian's words left Lu Yan standing there completely stunned, her mind blank and unable to speak. At that moment, Xiaotian spoke again. "Captain Lu, the Great Yan Empire is thriving with national fortune. No matter what difficulties arise, they will surely turn peril into safety. You shouldn't worry too much. Yet Lu Yan glanced at little Zero, seemingly about to say something. But she was interrupted by Xiao Tian, who said, Captain Lu, as for little Zero, I will properly educate her later. If you have other matters to attend to, feel free to go ahead, it's all right. After saying that, Xiao Tian turned to little Zero and snapped impatiently, Hurry up and follow me. Hearing this, little Zero obediently trailed behind Xiao Tian, following him along the ornamental lake in the imperial garden toward the other side. Leaving a group of female guards fuming with anger, one of them spoke up, Captain, if I remember correctly, you've watched the young general grow up, haven't you? Just now, the royal prince acted as if he were the young general's own father. We've become outsiders. The young general knows the royal prince. It's been less than 2 days, hasn't it? And young general is way too obedient in front of royal prince, isn't he? Hearing this, Lu Yan was also extremely panicked. Turning to the deputy captain beside him, he said, It seems the problem is even more serious than I imagined. Quickly write a letter to the Grand General, and also inform Minister Zhong. The deputy captain nodded, said, Understood, and then left. This man is clearly a top-tier big shot. Yet all he wants is to live off his empress wife. Now he has finally achieved the life he always dreamed of. With clothes handed to him and meals served to his mouth, he even enjoys the service of palace maids. But just now little Zero almost exposed herself, luckily I stopped her in time. Xiao Tian was furious at the sight of little Zero. Are you an idiot? If you had blurted out Blood Cloud Tower just now, how would you have explained it afterward? Please, I just want to leisurely enjoy my retirement as a royal prince. Can you not mess with me? Use your brain before you speak, and stop talking nonsense. Realizing he had almost caused trouble, little Zero obediently took the scolding without any complaint. I know I was wrong, I won't do it again, little Zero promised Xiao Tian, pressing his lips together. Looking at the silly girl's gaze, Xiao Tian let out a helpless sigh. What exactly do you want? Don't try to fool me with that lame excuse. Hearing this, little Zero let out a long sigh. The next second, he immediately knelt on the ground. Your Highness, please take me as your disciple. I want to become as powerful as you. Xiao Tian's mouth twitched as he turned around and walked away, hands behind his back, shaking his head repeatedly. I don't know how to cultivate, I can't teach you. How could that be? Your Highness, you're so incredibly powerful. You even destroyed the Blood Cloud Tower with just a flick of your finger. There's no way you don't know cultivation, little Zero said with a look of disbelief. She immediately caught up with Xiao Tian, who shrugged and said he was just lucky to have been born into a good life. Hearing this, little Zero retorted somewhat annoyed. Your Highness, I've grown up now, I'm not a child anymore. Please don't brush me off like that. Xiao Tian sighed as he looked at the pair of large breasts on little Zero's chest and said, Did you trade your brains for those big things on your chest? What's there to be proud of? Besides, I'm not brushing you off. There's really nothing I can teach you. After saying that, Xiao Tian quickly walked back to the edge of the imperial garden and lazily collapsed into the lounge chair again. Little Zero returned to Xiao Tian's side, standing there huffily. Little brat, Xiao Tian snorted lightly and continued watching the film. He was enjoying the service from the palace maid. Little Zero, on the other hand, pouted as she watched him, not making a sound, just silently staring at him without looking away. Beside them, Lu Yan watched the strange way Xiao Tian and little Zero interacted, completely unable to understand it. However, what truly troubled her was the threat from Blood Cloud Tower. Just as Lu Yan was feeling uneasy, the entire Great Yin Empire was also somewhat anxious. Xiao Tian once again brought everyone to Azure Flame Mountain to feast on roasted wild boar. Ever since the last time he had tasted it, he simply couldn't forget the flavor. As the captain of the female Imperial Guards, Lu Yan naturally accompanied them once again to provide protection. At that moment, a female Imperial Guard from the palace came running toward the mountain. Seeing this scene, Lu Yan quickly approached and asked his subordinate, If I recall correctly, you are supposed to be on duty at the palace. Why have you come here? Captain, the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets has just sent word that Blood Cloud Tower, the top assassin organization in the southern wilderness domain, has been completely wiped out by a mysterious powerhouse. The King of Assassins Yun Zuanlai, the heart-devouring Princess Yu Yan, and the skull-cracking Han Huangfeng have all been confirmed dead, with their bodies as evidence. From now on, the Blood Cloud Tower no longer exists in the southern wilderness domain. After the female guard finished delivering the message, the group of Lu Yan's old subordinates collectively turned their heads to look over. Lu Yan was instantly dumbfounded upon hearing this. For the past half-month, He had been constantly worried that the Blood Cloud Tower headquarters would cause trouble for the Great Yin Empire. Yet now he was being told that the Blood Cloud Tower had been destroyed. And the female guard beside him suddenly laughed. "Boss, what a coincidence. More than half a month ago, you said it would be great if the Blood Cloud Tower was wiped out by some hidden master. And now the Blood Cloud Tower is really gone. What a damn coincidence to the extreme." At that moment, the female guard delivering the message cautiously asked, "Captain, when you said that, it couldn't have been 17 days ago, could it?" Everyone was taken aback, their expressions freezing as they all turned to look at the messenger guard. "Exactly that day, why do you ask?" The messenger guard's expression grew even more peculiar. According to the intelligence from the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets, the day the Blood Cloud Tower fell was precisely the day the captain said those words. The surroundings instantly fell into silence, until someone finally broke the quiet. "Boss, your words must be blessed with some kind of magic, right?" After a long while, Lu Yan quietly walked over and sat down by the side. She took off a piece of jade hanging around her neck and gazed at it in her hand. Her tears unknowingly welled up in her eyes as she murmured, "Someone has avenged you. That's wonderful. Thank you, truly thank you." Her former subordinates, the other female guards, also watched her back with reddened eyes in silence. On the other hand, Xiao Tian, who was personally enjoying the fun of grilling meat, carefreely hummed a tune while eating. "Royal Prince, thank you," Little Zero, sitting beside Xiao Tian, whispered to him. "That's just their mouth being blessed, it has nothing to do with me." "Stop talking nonsense," Xiao Tian said with a dark face. "If you're so free, go slice the meat for me." "Boring," Little Zero pouted as she picked up her small knife to help him slice the meat. Xiao Tian turned around and saw Lu Yan sitting there, her back trembling slightly. He murmured softly, "You're welcome." On the other side, above the ruins of the Blood Cloud Tower headquarters in the southern wilderness domain, a black space suddenly twisted into existence. The next moment, two figures emerged from within. The young man inquired, "Teacher, could it have been the Great Yin Empire?" "Impossible. There are many who could annihilate the Blood Cloud Tower, but the Great Yin Empire is certainly not one of them. They simply lack the strength. Let's go. With Zi Ruoyan currently held back by my old friend, this is our perfect opportunity," the elder in black robes concluded. He and the young man's figures distorted once again. "Teacher, where are we heading now?" "The northern frontier battlefield." "No, we're going to Azure Flame Mountain." As the elder's voice faded, the figures of the master and disciple vanished simultaneously. This man is clearly a top-tier powerhouse. Yet all he wants is to live off his Empress wife. The Empress is personally leading the campaign, busy suppressing the rebellion. Yet, he indulged in a life of luxury and extravagance, with clothes handed to him and meals served to his mouth, even enjoying the attentions of palace maids. He even captivated his female bodyguard, who became completely infatuated with him and obeyed his every wish. And soon, everything here was swiftly delivered to the Empress via Lu Yan's carrier pigeon. At this moment, the northern frontier border, Empress Zi Ruoyan, clad in golden armor, gazed into the distance. Since arriving here, she had already clashed with the savage Saint Master 3 times. In their last encounter, he was even wounded by her sword energy. If they were to cross blades again, she was determined to slay him. That goes without saying. "Your Majesty is the unparalleled prodigy of our era. How could a decrepit old relic possibly stand in your way?" Zhong Lishuang also burst into hearty laughter. At that moment, the carrier pigeon message from the palace also arrived. Zhong Lishuang received it and noticed there were 2 letters. One was an official dispatch, the other a personal letter from home. Upon opening it, Zhong Lishuang's expression shifted slightly. "The Blood Cloud Tower's branch in our Great Yin Empire has been annihilated by an unknown powerful force. The sender of the letter is Captain Lu Yan of the Imperial Guard. She would never falsify such a matter. There's actually such a thing. This is somewhat troubling." Zi Ruoyan frowned, immediately thinking that the Blood Cloud Tower headquarters might take action. At that moment, Zi Ruoyan noticed Zhong Lishuang beside her, trembling all over, crushing the letter in her hand, one from Lu Yan and the other from Zhong Yangming. Zi Ruoyan immediately understood what was happening. Taking the letter, she was taken aback. She never expected that little Zero, that girl, would be so captivated by Xiao Tian's charm, meticulously dressing up every day and willingly staying by his side. "Xiao Tian is that charming? I didn't notice it back then." Zi Ruoyan truly never expected that her nominal husband had such skills. An ordinary person. He even managed to tame little Zero, that fiery little horse. Then, recalling that morning, he suddenly laughed. "But he is quite handsome. However, no matter how handsome he is, he still cannot." Sneak around with other women behind my back. At this thought, Zi Ruoyan let out a light hum. She felt a slight hint of displeasure in her heart. You little brat, if I don't spank your butt red when we get back, I'm not your mother. Zhong Lishuang was even more furious and slapped the city wall in front of her. The entire border fortress wall trembled slightly. Zhong Lishuang was startled, not expecting her palm strike to be so powerful. But soon she realized it wasn't just the wall shaking. The ground outside was trembling too. In the distance, clouds of dust rose as the barbarian army began their assault on the city. One after another, barbarians with bluish skin roared, brandishing their broadswords as they charged toward the fortress gates. Above the horde of barbarians, an elder draped in animal hide and wearing a bone mask hovered in the air. The spiritual energy within him surged as he chanted incantations under his breath, transformed into ignited light. Into the bodies of the barbarian warriors below. Each barbarian warrior began to glow, and their charging speed continuously accelerated. Seeing this scene, Zhong Lishuang asked Your Majesty to deal with the old man while she herself would defend the city. Be careful, Zi Ruoyan instructed before leaving. She raised her sword and soared into the sky, charging toward the savage Saint Master. Jia Su, you truly have a death wish. Great Yan Empress, this old man is merely striving to secure a future for our savage kingdom. I dare not die before the task is accomplished. It is a pity that the future of the savage kingdom will be cut short by your hands, Zi Ruoyan. The sword light cascaded like a waterfall, forcing the savage Saint Master Jia Su into a continuous retreat. This caused his previous injuries to flare up, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Zi Ruoyan's face was as cold as frost, her sword emanating a chilling aura. It wouldn't be long before she could slay this savage Saint Master. You should not have left the savage kingdom. Without the protection of the Guardian formation, you are no match for me. With that, Zi Ruoyan swung her sword once more. A crimson sword aura swept across the sky. Watching the sword aura charging toward him, Jia Su raised his hand and conjured a burning crimson barrier, blocking the terrifying sword aura. Witnessing this scene, Zi Ruoyan's heart skipped a beat in shock. The next second, the red barrier suddenly appeared all around her, sealing her tightly within. This is the sealing formation. Zi Ruoyan looked around with a grave expression. So that's it. You were spitting blood to draw the formation. Jia Su continuously channeled the spiritual energy from within his body into the bone staff in his hand. Excellent. With me, the Empress, personally overseeing this blood-burning spiritual sealing formation, you won't be able to break free for at least 10 days to half a month. What's the point of trapping me? You won't be able to breach the northern frontier border either. Zi Ruoyan furrowed her willow-like eyebrows, staring intently at Jia Su. She couldn't understand what the point of this was. The Dark Soul Palace of Great Yen has offered a price this old man simply couldn't refuse, to take action and delay you. Jia Su spoke between coughs. I suppose the Poison Marsh Elder of the Dark Soul Palace has already reached the territory of Great Yen by now. How pitiful for the common people of the Great Yen Imperial City. What a shame you can't go back now. Hearing this, Zi Ruoyan's expression darkened, and the spiritual energy within her body surged violently. Jia Su, if Great Yen is plunged into misery and suffering, I will make your entire savage kingdom pay with its destruction. This man is clearly a top-tier powerhouse. Yet all he wants is to live off his empress wife. His wife is busy leading the imperial army to repel the foreign invasion. Yet he indulges in pleasure within the palace walls. He began living a life of luxury, with clothes handed to him and meals served to his mouth. Not only did he enjoy the daily attentions of the palace maids, he even managed to completely captivate his little bodyguard, who became utterly devoted and obedient to him. In his free time, he would take his little bodyguard to enjoy roasted wild boar. After eating his fill, Xiao Tian comfortably lay on the ground. The wild boar meat hunted here was just so much more fragrant, and the water was exceptionally sweet, truly a land of good mountains. Little Zero and the female guard standing nearby twitched at the corners of their mouths. Your Highness, you really have quite the appetite. They couldn't figure out how Xiao Tian's stomach could hold so much meat. Good digestion, can't help it, Xiao Tian replied casually while picking his teeth with a blade of grass. In reality, his body was so powerful that it required constant eating to sustain energy. Fortunately, the Empress was supporting him. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have dirt to eat. Moreover, this Azure Flame Mountain not only boasts beautiful scenery and clean water, but also offers incredibly delicious wild boar meat. It would be wonderful if we could reserve it just for raising livestock. And now is the perfect time to head back for a nap. Xiao Tian looked around and noticed someone was missing, so he couldn't help but ask, "Where's your leader, Lu Yan?" Little Zero replied softly, explaining, "I asked her to go to Azure Flame Town to bring back some Azure Flame wine for His Highness the Royal Prince to taste. Actually, I also hope that Sister Lu can take the opportunity to pay respects to her husband." Xiao Tian was a bit surprised to hear this. Azure Flame Town was the very town her husband had defended to the death, and it's right nearby. Yes, I think Sister Lu must want to share the good news of the Blood Cloud Tower's downfall with her husband. Little Zero's face flushed slightly as she said, "Royal Prince, please don't blame me for taking the initiative, but the wine in Azure Flame Town, brewed with mountain spring water, truly has a unique flavor." Looking at Little Zero's cautious gaze, Xiao Tian was speechless. "Can you relax a bit? You're making me seem like a bad guy." Little Zero gave an awkward smile. It can't be helped. The psychological shadow that Xiao Tian's full-on killer intent left on her hasn't faded away yet. Xiao Tian gazed at Azure Flame Town and murmured softly, "As the saying goes, different lands breed different people. Since the town's wine is excellent, the food should be equally good. Lead the way. I want to conduct an on-site inspection of this Azure Flame Town." Little Zero glanced at the surrounding tents and prey, then asked, "What about all this? If we go to the town and Sister Lu happens to return, wouldn't we miss each other?" "That's simple." Xiao Tian pointed at the female guard and said, "You stay here. If we and Lu Yan haven't returned in half an hour, take everything back to the palace." This made the female guards hesitate, as their duty was to ensure Xiao Tian's safety. Xiao Tian waved his hand and said, "All right, all of you combined couldn't beat this little girl anyway. There's no need. Just take it as a half-day off, have a good rest, balance work and relaxation." Just as Xiao Tian was heading to Azure Flame Town with Little Zero to enjoy life, his wife, the Empress, was trapped in a formation at that very moment. Meanwhile, General Zhong Lishuang was desperately defending the city, locked in fierce combat with the barbarians. At this moment, Zhong Lishuang also noticed Zi Ruoyan trapped, and her expression changed drastically. She wanted to rush forward to rescue them. However, she was stopped by Zi Ruoyan's stern shout, which halted Zhong Lishuang's charge. "Don't come over. Hold the border firmly. Don't let the barbarians break through." In the blood-burning spiritual sealing formation, Zi Ruoyan slightly parted her crimson lips. She let out a soft breath, and frost materialized in the air before her. Jiasu, gripping the bone staff, stared at Zi Ruoyan and said, "Accept your fate, Empress of Great Yen." Zi Ruoyan stared coldly at him and said, "I don't understand, is it worth it? By using this blood-burning spiritual sealing formation, you will never have the chance to break through to the next stage in this lifetime. Of course it's worth it. With this reward, the Savage Kingdom will have the means to continue northward and conquer new territories. Ever since your father suddenly disappeared, I knew the waters of the Great Yin Empire ran too deep. Our Savage Kingdom now only wishes to stay far away from Great Yin." Hearing this, Zi Ruoyan fell silent, his gaze icy as he stared at Jiasu. Possible retaliation from the Blood Cloud Tower headquarters, the threat from Dark Soul Palace, and the Poison Marsh Elder. This is truly frustrating. No, I need to calm down. Zi Ruoyan exhaled a breath of cold air, lowering his body temperature and forcing himself to settle down. It seems she needs to find a way to break free and return to aid the Great Yin Empire, minimizing the losses as much as possible. Jiasu, holding the bone staff, looked at Zi Ruoyan, whom he had detained, with great admiration. Indeed, she is worthy of being the renowned Great Yin Empress. She hasn't been controlled by her emotions or wasted her own spiritual energy. It seems she is gathering strength and waiting for an opportunity. It's a pity for those innocent people, but there's no other way. It's for the Savage Kingdom. Meanwhile, Azure Flame Town is now enveloped by a formation. Lu Yan's figure was sent flying from a distance, a mouthful of blood staining the ground red. "I heard that the Imperial Guards of the Great Yin Empire are all seasoned veterans of the battlefield, experienced and powerful. But now it seems they're not that impressive after all." The young man shrouded in a black robe sneered mockingly. These two were none other than members of the Dark Soul Palace. Lu Yan's heart sank to the bottom. She knew Azure Flame Town was unlikely to survive this time. Unaware, Xiao Tian is rushing here, and it's about to be his moment to show off again. This man is clearly a top-tier expert. Yet, all he wants is to live off his Empress wife. His wife is personally leading the campaign to quell the rebellion. He, however, indulged in a life of luxury and extravagance. But now a top-tier power has set its sights on his Empress wife. Even the female captain who was protecting him was severely injured. How dare they ruin my cushy life? This is absolutely unforgivable. So Xiao Tian, along with his little bodyguard, hurried to Azure Flame Town to rescue his own guard. At that moment, Luoyan looked at the person before him and immediately understood what was going on. It turned out that the Dark Soul Palace had actually teamed up with the Savage Kingdom to force the Emperor to lead the expedition himself. What a cunning plan. What exactly does our great Yin Empire possess that makes you go to such lengths? Elder Xiang Yuanbai from the Poison Marsh of the 6 evil factions of the Dark Soul Palace actually came to Great Yin in person with his beloved disciple, the heart-piercing sword Gu Hongmao. Gu Hongmao wore a mocking expression and said, "Not bad at all, quite clever and quick-witted. All right, quickly finish her off. Sacrifice the people of Azure Flame Town in a blood ritual. It will take some time. There are many people watching the Great Yin Empire, so don't alert anyone else." The Poison Marsh elder spoke from the side. Hearing this, Gu Hongmao stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. "Don't worry, teacher. Azure Flame Town is hidden deep in these mountains and won't be discovered by anyone." He spoke while thrusting his sword toward Luoyan, who faced the sudden viper-like strike of the blade. Luoyan quickly raised her sword to block, but the slender, sharp tip still pierced her shoulder. The next second, Gu Hongmao delivered a fierce kick to Luoyan's abdomen. With wide eyes, she coughed up a mouthful of blood, was sent flying backward, and crashed to the ground, scraping out a shallow trench. She finally came to a stop after colliding with her husband's tombstone. "Why aren't you screaming? Start yelling." Gu Hongmao walked up to Luoyan, stepped on her shoulder, and spoke with a sinister grin. Then he thrust his sword toward Luoyan's heart. Facing imminent death, Luoyan showed no fear. Her body pressed against her husband's tombstone. As if in his embrace, she murmured, "My husband, as your wife, I have not brought shame upon you." Luoyan wore a proud smile, closed her eyes, and prepared to embrace death. Just when Luoyan was certain to die, a finger suddenly reached out from the side and gave a gentle flick. A crisp metallic clang echoed as the sword Gu Hongmao had thrust toward Luoyan's heart was unexpectedly flicked away. The rebounding force sent him staggering backward, nearly causing the heart-piercing sword to fly from his grasp. "What do you think you're doing to my chief guard?" A familiar voice, and the death that had been delayed. Luoyan opened his eyes in surprise. It was then that he realized Xiao Tian had disappeared at some point. He had already come to her side. She had no idea what had just happened. Xiao Tian spoke coldly, "Little girl, leave dealing with him to me, your highness royal prince." A slight smile curled at the corner of little Zero's lips. She picked up the long sword pulsing with spiritual energy and swung it toward Gu Hongmao. Seeing this scene, Luoyan finally understood and laughed at himself for overthinking. He had actually mistaken the royal prince for blocking the attack earlier when it was clearly the young general. "Just asked you to fetch some wine, how did you almost get yourself killed?" Xiao Tian said while prying open Luoyan's mouth. He stuffed the healing pill he had obtained from the assassin organization into her mouth. Then he casually wiped his blood-stained hands on his clothes, showing no sign of disgust. At that moment, Luoyan felt he had gained a new understanding of Xiao Tian. It seemed the royal prince wasn't quite as annoying as he had thought. This man was clearly a peerless powerhouse. Yet he only wanted to live off his empress wife. His wife was leading the army herself, busy suppressing the rebellion. He, however, indulged in a life of luxury, with clothes handed to him and meals served to his mouth. Not only did he enjoy the daily attendance of palace maids, he also captivated the pride of the great Yin Empire, who became completely infatuated with him and obeyed his every whim. Yet now, a top-tier power has set its sights on his empress wife. Even the female captain who was protecting him was beaten to the brink of death. Fortunately, Xiao Tian arrived just in time. He took a fatal blow for Luoyan. "How dare you ruin my cushy life? Absolutely unforgivable." Xiao Tian immediately ordered little Zero beside him to kill this bastard. Hearing this, little Zero's lips curled into a faint smile. She picked up the long sword, surging with spiritual energy, and swung it toward Gu Hongmao. Seeing this, Luoyan's face turned pale as he urgently exclaimed, "Royal Prince, quickly have little Zero take you away." That is the Poison Marsh elder Xiang Yuanbai from the Dark Soul Palace, a powerhouse at the 7th layer awakening stage. Staying here will mean death. Upon hearing this, Xiao Tian asked the system to check the old man's strength. The system instantly provided Xiao Tian with the answer. "Master, the target's actual cultivation stage is the 7th layer awakening stage, level 8 peak. Their spiritual energy attributes are a mix of water and poison, suspected to be skilled in poison-based techniques. Why is it that in my perception, whether it's that girl little Zero Luoyan, or this old man, their strength seems about the same? Master, it's because you are too powerful. In your presence they are merely like ants. The difference in stages holds little significance for you. Hearing this, Xiao Tian took a sharp breath, his expression turning somewhat grave. Little Zero, a girl at the 5th layer of the void-breaking stage, was definitely no match for that old man. What should they do? Lu Yan was watching from the side, and I couldn't intervene now. That old soldier was under the Empress's command. If she knew about her own strength, she would definitely tell the Empress. If the Empress asks for my help and I refuse, what if my allowance gets cut off? Even with some savings, they'll eventually run out. Would I have to go back to being a killer to support myself? It seems like I'm just going in circles right back to where I started. The more Xiao Tian thought about it, the darker his expression became. Royal Prince, don't be afraid. I will fight to the death to get you out of here. Seeing Xiao Tian's expression, Lu Yan thought he was frightened by the poison marsh elder. In reality, Xiao Tian just didn't want to slap the poison marsh elder to death right in front of her. Xiao Tian sighed helplessly. I just gave you a Dan pill to heal your injuries. Why are you in such a hurry to throw your life away? Hearing this, Lu Yan was about to speak. He was astonished to discover that his severed arm had completely healed. The Dan pill he had just taken must have been a life-saving treasure bestowed by His Majesty. Yet Xiao Tian had taken it without hesitation, which suggested that the royal prince wasn't as bad as he had imagined. There was no time now to dwell on such thoughts. Your Highness, the royal prince, young General Tian, is a prodigious talent and a pillar of the great Yin Empire. He must not be lost in a place like this. Wait a moment. I will fight desperately to buy you time to escape. Once we enter the Imperial City and activate the formation, even the Poison Marsh Elder won't be able to breach it. As long as we hold out until Her Majesty returns, she will surely avenge us. Lu Yan's attitude was resolute as she picked up the battle blade from the ground and stared intently ahead. But the next second, Lu Yan's expression lit up as she realized Little Zero had grown stronger, and had even grasped the rudiments of sword intent. Just then, a formation took shape behind Little Zero, with faint flames flickering around it. Xiao Tian, however, looked utterly confused and turned to Lu Yan to ask, "What rudiments? Besides looking quite impressive, is there anything special about it?" Lu Yan explained in a trembling voice, "The rudiments of sword intent. Once it takes form, once condensed into sword intent, it becomes invincible among peers." At that moment, she became even more determined to let Little Zero take Royal Prince Xiao Tian and flee immediately. On the contrary, Xiao Tian looked utterly confused. In his eyes, there was nothing particularly special about Little Zero's sword. The only impression he had was that she wielded it quite gracefully. Meanwhile, Gu Hongmao, who was directly facing Little Zero's flame sword dance, was consumed by helpless rage. Damn it, she's clearly younger than me. It's bad enough that her cultivation stage is higher. She has even grasped the rudiments of sword intent. His eyes were filled with venomous resentment, driven mad with jealousy. The jealousy was causing him to lose his composure, and the long sword in his hand began to falter. Seizing the opportunity, Little Zero swung his sword with a decisive strike. Instantly, a powerful sword chi sent Gu Hongmao's long sword flying from his grasp. "A scoundrel like you dares to cause trouble in Great Yen? Prepare to die." With those words, Little Zero swiftly thrust his sword towards the opponent's throat. Gu Hongmao's pupils contracted sharply, feeling the fear of death for the first time as a cold sweat instantly drenched his entire body. Suddenly, a tremor rang out. The long sword originally aimed at Gu Hongmao's throat collided with a patch of purplish-black spiritual energy. And the purplish-black spiritual energy, having blocked this sword strike, suddenly released 3 small snakes that slithered up the blade, lunging toward Little Zero to bite her. Seeing this scene, Little Zero's face turned pale as she exclaimed in alarm, "Oh no!" Although the man was a top-tier big shot, he only wanted to live off his Empress wife's wealth. However, a top-tier power had set its sights on his Empress wife. Even the female captain assigned to protect him was severely injured. Fortunately, Xiao Tian arrived just in time. He blocked a fatal blow for Lu Yan. "How dare you ruin my cushy life? Absolutely unforgivable." Xiao Tian immediately ordered Little Zero beside him to kill this bastard. Upon hearing this, Little Zero curled the corner of his mouth slightly, gathered strength and swung his sword. Instantly, a powerful sword chi sent Gu Hongmao's long sword flying from his grasp. Immediately after, a reverse-handed sword thrust was aimed at his throat. However, she was blocked by a mass of purplish-black spiritual energy. And the purplish-black spiritual energy suddenly transformed into numerous small snakes, crawling towards the sword's blade and biting at Little Zero. Seeing this scene, Little Zero's face turned pale as she let out a startled cry. She hastily flung the long sword in her hand away, and leaped backward to Xiao Tian's side. The long sword hit the ground with a sharp clang, and the green grass beneath it instantly withered and died. Little Zero's face turned pale as she watched. It was actually highly toxic. If she had reacted even a moment slower, she might have lost her hand. There's always someone better, now I understand clearly. Poison Marsh Elder Xiang Yuanbai walked over to his disciple Gu Hongmao. Gu Hongmao bowed respectfully and said, Master, I understand. Xiang Yuanbai stared at Little Zero and couldn't help but sigh. Little girl, you've got guts. To dare draw your sword instead of running away in front of me, the Poison Marsh Elder. At the same time, he tilted his head to glance at Xiao Tian, the great Yan royal prince, though he was merely an ordinary cripple. Fortunately, he's quite handsome. But if the Empress chose someone like you as her husband, you must have something special about you. Little Zero, who was standing nearby, had already figured it out. Xiao Tian had stepped in to save someone, but these two hadn't seen it at all. The two poor guys had no idea how terrifying Royal Prince was. The reason she didn't flee upon seeing Poison Marsh Elder was precisely because she had Xiao Tian backing her up. At that moment, Little Zero suddenly caught a whiff of alcohol. Turning her head, she was startled to find Xiao Tian reeking of liquor. Xiao Tian looked at Poison Marsh Elder Xiang Yuanbai and said, I've long heard of your reputation and know that today might not end well. I wish to trade a secret about the Empress in exchange for my life. Upon hearing this, Lu Yen flew into a rage, calling out Xiao Tian by his full name. Only Little Zero looked helplessly at the shattered wine jar at Xiao Tian's feet, inwardly complaining. Your Highness, the scent of alcohol from your sweat is just too strong. Sister Lu seems to really believe it. I need to calm her down. If she gets caught in the royal prince's indiscriminate damage, it would be terrible. Little Zero immediately grabbed the furious Lu Yen. This action left Lu Yen confused. He couldn't understand why the young general was stopping him. Sister Lu, don't act recklessly. The royal prince has his own considerations for doing this. Little Zero spoke softly, signaling Lu Yen to stay calm. There are some things I cannot tell you either. Lu Yen looked at Little Zero in despair, completely unable to understand when young general had become so irrational. At that moment, Xiang Yuanbai revealed a faint smile. Interesting. Empress's secret. I can agree to your terms. If this secret proves valuable enough, I might spare your lives. Xiao Tian, however, shook his head and insisted that the two of them leave first, while he stayed behind to share the secret. If you go back on your word and kill me later, at least they will have a chance to survive. Xiao Tian's words left the somewhat irritable Lu Yen stunned. She had assumed Xiao Tian was using the Empress's secret to bargain for his own life out of cowardice, never expecting it was actually to ensure their safety first. Lu Yen took a deep breath, her gaze resolute. Your Highness, my duty is to ensure your safety. Why not share the secret with me? Let me stay in your place. But as soon as Lu Yen finished speaking, Xiao Tian interrupted her rudely. Nonsense. Do you think this Elder Xiang is not sharp? I'm staying because I'm afraid of death and might reveal secrets. What use are you staying if you're not afraid of death? Xiao Tian now wished he could kick this foolish woman flying. Just follow the script obediently and escape with Little Zero. At this moment, Little Zero also understood Xiao Tian's intention, and spoke up to persuade her. It was clear that Xiao Tian didn't want to reveal his strength in front of Sister Lu, so he let the two of them leave first, making it easier for him to take action. Just then, Xiang Yuanbai suddenly spoke up. You don't get to decide here. You have no choice. Xiao Tian was taken aback and asked him what he meant by that. It's very simple. You have only one choice in front of you. Reveal the secret you know. If the content manages to interest me, then I will spare your miserable life so you can serve me. That might not be a bad idea either. After Xiang Yuanbai finished speaking, the surroundings instantly fell silent. Little Zero slapped her forehead, thinking that Xiang Yuanbai had just sealed his own fate. Meanwhile, the unaware Lu Yen roared in fury. Xiang Yuanbai, you've gone too far. Suddenly, Xiao Tian burst into laughter. You old geezer, you really leave me speechless. In that case, don't blame me for bullying an old man like you. As soon as the words fell, a terrifying pressure erupted from Xiao Tian, sweeping forward with overwhelming force. Immediately, Xiang Yuanbai was so terrified that his whole body trembled, staggering backward as he stared at Xiao Tian in disbelief. The man was clearly a top-tier big shot. Yet all he wanted was to live off his Empress wife. In the eyes of others, he was a good-for-nothing without any cultivation level. In reality, he had been playing dumb to outsmart others all along. But now a top-tier power has set its sights on his Empress wife. Even he has been bullied to the point of no return. Xiao Tian finally stopped holding back, and a terrifying pressure suddenly erupted, spreading in all directions. Instantly, Xiang Yuanbai was so frightened that his entire body trembled, staggering backward as he stared at Xiao Tian in disbelief. Unwilling to listen, Xiao Tian, in a fit of rage, stomped his foot violently on the ground, causing the surrounding earth to instantly crack open. The terrifying force surged through the cracks, causing two mountains beside Azure Flame Town to split directly down the middle. Witnessing this scene, Xiang Yuanbai felt his scalp go numb, his legs weakened, and he collapsed to the ground. Xiao Tian looked at Xiang Yuanbai, feeling annoyed. He just couldn't understand why people in this world were unwilling to listen to reason. Xiao Tian half-crouched in front of Xiang Yuanbai and sighed helplessly. I really don't want to reveal my true strength. Is it really that difficult for you to simply dismiss this Imperial Guard captain? At this point, seeing Xiang Yuanbai remain silent, Xiao Tian raised his hand and slapped him, demanding, I'm asking you a question, say something. Upon hearing this, Xiang Yuanbai trembled as he spoke. It's all a misunderstanding, senior. Xiao Tian slapped him again, saying, I'm barely over 20. If you can't speak properly, then don't speak at all. Xiang Yuanbai was about to explain when Xiao Tian unexpectedly slapped him again. Xiang Yuanbai took a deep breath and shouted, Sir, I. But before he could finish his sentence, Xiao Tian immediately started slapping Xiang Yuanbai with both hands. Why are you shouting so loudly? You scared me, you know that. Lu Yan stood by, staring blankly at the scene. Young General, what on earth is going on? This can't be real, can it? As you can see, Royal Prince, his strength is beyond measure. Little Zero patted Lu Yan on the shoulder with a serious expression. So you must never reveal Royal Prince's true power to His Majesty. Otherwise, you would be ungrateful. Lu Yan looked at Little Zero's calm expression and suddenly understood. So, the reason Young General's temperament changed drastically, and he became so obedient to Xiao Tian is because Xiao Tian is overwhelmingly powerful. Suddenly, he thought of something and asked, Young General Blood Cloud Tower. Could it be? Little Zero nodded in agreement. Since you already know the strength of Royal Prince, there's no need to hide it from you. The mysterious powerhouse who annihilated Blood Cloud Tower was none other than Royal Prince himself. Lu Yan was thunderstruck. She never imagined that the mysterious expert who avenged her husband would turn out to be Royal Prince himself. Watching Xiao Tian's retreating figure, she couldn't help but marvel at how incredibly powerful Royal Prince was. But then, he suddenly noticed that Xiang Yuanbai had dug all 10 fingers into the soil, while a formation had appeared beneath his feet. Lu Yan's face changed drastically as he urgently shouted to Xiao Tian, Your Highness, step back quickly. But Xiang Yuanbai, who had been beaten to a pulp, suddenly let out a cold laugh. The next second, the ground beneath Xiao Tian's feet suddenly turned into a muddy purplish-black swamp. Almost instantly, Xiang Yuanbai retreated backward, and Xiao Tian's entire body sank into the poisonous swamp. It turned out that this was the nether poison swamp, which Xiang Yuanbai had unleashed at the cost of burning his own lifespan. Even a 9th-layer half-step sacred stage expert would be trapped within it, would succumb to the poison, and even a terrifying existence at the 10th-layer sacred stage could not avoid the toxins invading their body. Xiang Yuanbai extended his hand, pointing at Xiao Tian. It was clearly visible that his arm had developed numerous age spots, having aged immeasurably. Enjoy it to the fullest, he said. I have bathed in a deadly poison that consumed 30 years of my life. Your skin will begin to fester, your flesh corrode, and your bones will become as brittle as charcoal, shattering at the slightest touch. Struggle all you want. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink, and the faster the poison invades your body. So what if you're powerful? You've still fallen into my trap. Xiang Yuanbai laughed maniacally. Seeing this scene, Lu Yan grew extremely anxious and wanted to step forward to help. However, she was held back by Little Zero beside her. You shouldn't go up and cause trouble for His Highness the Royal Prince. But this is the nether poison swamp. His Highness is indeed very strong, but the poison... Before Lu Yan could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by Little Zero. Sister Lu, you're underestimating His Highness the Royal Prince too much. He's not just strong, he's unbelievably strong. Upon hearing Little Zero's words, Lu Yan was left utterly dumbfounded. When he looked towards Xiao Tian again, her face instantly turned pale. On the surface, he appeared to be someone who only wanted to live off his Empress wife. But behind the scenes he is a top-tier big shot. But now a top-tier power has set its sights on his Empress wife. Not even him do they intend to spare. The enemy did not hesitate to sacrifice 30 years of their lifespan to unleash the deadly poison bath. He also intended to poison Xiao Tian to death. Unexpectedly, Xiao Tian calmly walked out of the nether poison swamp, shaking off the purple-black mud from his body. He even gave the old man a thumbs up, praising him for burning his own lifespan to help remove the dead skin from his body. Xiang Yuanbai's nether poison swamp, which consumed 30 years of his own lifespan, not only failed to take Xiao Tian's life but instead gave him a full-body whitening treatment. In the distance, Lu Yan and little Zero were as if struck by lightning, gaining a whole new level.